Hi, I'm Lisa Smith.
And I'm Jason Clark.
And we're from Minds at Work. And today we'd like to talk about problem solving. You know, this is something that you really, really believe in. So tell me a little bit about the thinking around problem solving.
Yeah, you're right. I've become quite obsessed with this. Problem solving is really a process of asking the right questions of the right people in the right order at the right time. I think what happens is when we see a problem, we're really keen to solve it. We want to jump to action, or we get passionate or fired up and we act. We ask the question, how? How do we solve the problem? And in my book, that's probably question number 9. Because before we ask how are we going to solve the problem, we need to have thought about, well, how many different ways could we solve the problem? Which means we still have to ask the question, why not and what if, before we even get into how. And before that, we need to be more analytical and think, well, hang on, before we get all creative, why is it happening? Do we understand the cause? Do we understand what's driving this thing? So we need to be asking why questions. But even before that, we need to be asking the what question. What do we think the actual problem is? How have we defined it? So part of our job is getting people to step back from action and start to think a little more clinically and creatively and analytically about what problem you're trying to solve so that you get it right the first time.
So can you tell me a little bit, like if I'm to be an A1 problem solver, tell me about my mindset. You know, where does my brain need to be?
So you've got to be convinced that there's a way out of this. If you're not feeling that in your bones, problem solving might not be a process that you could lead. So optimism is key. The second talent you need, though, or the second quality that you need, is persistence. Problem solving requires care and attention to detail and a willingness to listen to people and really make sure you've understood this thing. You need to understand what it is and why it works and its history. You need to know a lot about it. But the problem is you also need the fourth quality, which is incredible distance. You've got to be able to step back. You have to see this thing from 500 miles away. And this is why problem solving requires more than one person. Because what we've found is that people who are in the problem, people who have lived it, who feel the pain of the problem, aren't necessarily going to see a way out of it. And people who are distant, who can see all the possibilities, probably don't know enough about the thing that they're trying to change. That's why I believe that problem solving is a community sport. It involves all sorts of people with all sorts of experience. So we need optimism, persistence, knowledge, and distance.
Are there any great tools you've got up your sleeve? Any favourites?
Yeah, there's a couple of buttes that we're really keen to share. And one of my absolute favorites is what we call a problem map. Problem mapping takes all of the detail that's behind your head and behind everyone else's head and put it out where the rest of us can see it. And it means we can start to navigate. You see the whole thing from as many angles as possible. And then you go, if I do that, then that and that and that and that are all going to fall into place. And problem maps are absolutely critical as a way of understanding what it is you're dealing with. When you look at the news, every now and then you read an article and you think, well, there's no mystery here. I think I know what went wrong here. Cause and effect here is actually pretty straightforward. It went from the cause to the effect. Now, what I've given you here is a very simple map. Set fire to a spider using a blowtorch, cause, burn down parents' house, effect. Pretty straightforward. One cause, one effect. Now, what happens in the real world, it's not quite that simple, in that you might have a single effect that has multiple causes, or you could have a single cause that has multiple effects. Whenever we have a single cause and a single effect, we're usually blaming someone. We're usually pointing at someone and saying, yep, it's their own fault. But there's more to it than that. What is the convergence of factors that put the burger in that person's hand at that time? Yeah. Now, you could take this right back to the beginning of the universe. I don't want to go too far back. I want to go far back enough that I start to understand why this thing is happening. Now, when I look at this, I'm thinking, what part of this problem is within my sphere of influence? What could I change? Do I have to go all the way to the left-hand side of the map? Or there are other targets here that I could do something about? If I really want to solve this problem, I might need some other people at the table. I'm going to need people who've got influence that I don't have. And this is why you can't really solve it on your own. But this has just been about this convergence of all of these different causes to get the burger in the hands of the person, right? What are the effects of someone eating like this? Well, there's the effects on the individual. It's not going to be good for their health. That's going to give you the economic impacts, the social impacts. We have a high production, high consumption, carbon-rich economy. So you can see it's not simply what was it that brought the burger to the hand. It's what happens beyond this. The way I've learned to think of it. Now, not every problem looks like this, but an amazing amount do. That if you have a problem that affects individual humans or individual species, over time, it'll start to affect communities and groups and societies. And if it affects enough communities and groups and societies, it becomes a global problem. Yeah. Now, I'm not saying that anyone who wants to solve a problem has to solve it at a global scale. You could be solving it at a local scale. You're just breaking off a bit that you can achieve. And if we go upstream, why do the problems happen? And I'm more interested in the upstream than the downstream. Because if you work the upstream, what's on the left-hand side of the screen here, you can prevent everything on the right-hand side.
So I guess my starting point is to find my hamburger. Does that
Find your
sound right?
hamburger. That's perfect.
Yeah.
Find your hamburger.
What's my hamburger? What's that need? What's that problem I want to solve? Then it allows me to be able to peel back those layers, those structural layers, those cultural layers, so that they can find the key areas to strategize around. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And that's the way I think we tend to look at it. This is where I think I can get in. Can I change some of the structures? Can I influence the culture? Do I want to try to solve this at a human level before I even attempt a societal or global level? Where am I now and where am I going and how much of this map do I need? So that's the beauty of that.
This is the first video that we're presenting to the ADAPT Leadership Program. What do they need to come into our first session with, Jace? What do they need in their head?
I reckon there's two first steps. The first thing that I would do is define it. The minute you start to define the problem, you realize that there are other answers out there. So let's do one together. People don't care about climate. That's a problem statement, right? And so I might decide, well, if that's the problem, they don't care, then what I have to do is make them care. But was there another way to express that problem?
People don't think that climate change is a thing.
People don't think climate change is a thing. That's a different problem, isn't it? So if I decide that, yeah, I've got to make them care, but I didn't realize that the people I'm talking to don't even think it's real, I'm not going to succeed. So people don't care about climate change. You've said people don't think it's real. I'm going to say people don't know what they can do about climate change.
And some people have got more immediate concerns than climate change. It's another way
That's
to say
right. So people don't have time. That people don't have time to deal with climate change. People are feeling overwhelmed by climate change. People are feeling like it's too late to act on climate change.
I'm thinking that with each of those problems, I could go down a completely different solution path. So I'd want to be pretty clear on the problem that for me and my community, it made most sense to address.
That's exactly right. One of those is more likely to be true. Words have got real power, and if we run off with a badly defined problem, we will not solve it because we weren't strategic and surgical enough about what is it I'm trying to shift. So I think before anyone kind of brings us a problem to look at, I'm going to want them to try to redefine it the way we've just done now, at least 10 times. Really push until you've sort of defined it every way you can, and then pick the definition that you think seems the closest to the truth. That seems like, I think I kind of hit the nail on the head with definition number 5. Keep those other definitions as well, because they probably end up being part of the map anyway.
That's great. So earlier we were talking about having other people's knowledge involved in this. So if you can't come up with 10 yourself, it might be really interesting to think about people in your community or in your impacted area and get them to deliver a couple of those problem statements for you as well. You might get a bigger piece of the puzzle.
That's a great piece of advice. So that would be the first thing. When we can say what is the problem, you've actually thought about it. And you've said, this is the closest I can come to a really precise definition of the problem that I want to solve. That's a great place to start. Yeah. The second thing I would get people to do is to start asking why. Our ability to keep asking why, but why? Yeah, okay, but why? This is giving you the raw material of a problem map, because why is a question about causality. Why is it happening? Yes, but why is that happening? Yes, but why?
So if people come armed for our first workshop with the statement of their problem a number of different ways, 10 different ways,
At least.
if they have done their why, by the end of this workshop, then people will have a map that they can actually take away and test with their community. They'll understand what their hamburger is. They'll be able to call back, they'll be able to peel back the layers to find those structural and cultural areas, the things that might be the smart places to start, and they'll be able to get their community on board for this project that they're actually working on. And because if they can get their community to partner them through this process, through the weeks that they're doing this work, then they won't need to do that engagement work at the end. We know that they'll have a solution that the whole community can own.
That's why this is one of my favorite techniques, to get the problem out of my head, out of your head, and onto a piece of paper or a screen where we can all see it and we can tackle it together. Yeah. Good to talk to you, Lise.
Thanks, Jace. We'll see everybody on the 8th. Looking forward to it.
Be there.